Project 2 Part B. Recreate a layout using the skills from Project 1 and 2A. This is the navigations poster. Open the DL2B template.eps, or you may have a DL2B template.ai. That should open in Illustrator. If it opens in preview, well, it won't work. Scale my window down to fit here. And I'm going to tear off my tool palette again and let it free float. Command 0 to center my artwork. Oops, it's not a 0. Command 0 to center my artwork. I'm going to reset this. I was in the Essentials Classic. Reset Essentials Classic. Okay, tear off the tool palette. I'm going to set that off to the side. You don't need to be looking at that all the time. And minimize that by clicking on the double arrows. And let's see. Okay, I have a layers palette. I want this layer locked. So I'm going to toggle lock, roll over next to the eyeball. Eyeball makes it invisible if you poke it in the eye. And toggle lock. So this layer is now locked and I cannot draw on this layer. Add a new layer. Let me pull this up here. Add a new layer. There's a little plus sign. Create a new layer. Note that this layer has a red designation, and that means that when you do draw on this layer, the path will be indicated by a red line. Bounding box for the type. Anything else you do would be red on this layer. Okay, the first thing you want to do is try to figure out how to recreate this efficiently. And I would analyze it, and analyzing it, I look at it and I see a rectangle in the background that has been divided into 4 pieces. A light blue sky, a tan or light brown landmass, some sort of shoreline or surf in a light blue, same as the sky color, and then a body of water. Over that I see an airplane and some little stripes. There's some type and a bar, and that's really all there is to it. A couple of clouds. So I would start by drawing a rectangle that matches the background shapes as closely as possible. So let's see. There's my shapes. I guess I'll tear this off. There's a rectangle, and I'm going to just pull where I think it looks like. And Illustrator has a tendency to snap to things that it can see, so it sort of knows where that background image is. My default was a white fill and black strokes, and now I can't see anything. So I'm going to change my fill to 0 or nothing, no fill. And then take a closer look at my corner and see how close that is. And well, that's not really that close. So I'm going to drag that corner over that way. Press the space bar to get my hand and move this up and see the other corner. And that's pretty close, but I could move that corner just a little bit more also. And of course, I'm grabbing the anchor point, not the line. If I grab the line, then the whole rectangle moves, but I can rescale it by grabbing corners. Or these are technically, they call these handles. So there's a handle in each corner, handle in the middle of each side. And that's, again, using the main selection tool so that I'm selecting the object and not the actual anchor point. If I grab this anchor point, and you can see it's selected because it's red while the other ones are still white, I could do that. And obviously that's not something I want to do if I want to maintain a rectangular background. Okay, so there's a rectangle. And how do we divide this into pieces? Now, a requirement for this exercise is that the background is composed of 4 pieces that precisely fit together like a jigsaw puzzle with no gaps and no overlaps. And the best way to do that is using something you'll find on the Pathfinder palette. Let me make sure I got a Pathfinder palette here. I don't see my Pathfinder palette. So under Window, I will find, if I find a line, that would do, because a line transform and Pathfinder usually come up together. So there are my Pathfinders. Okay, I would start by drawing probably the shoreline. And I say that because if I'm dividing this into pieces, I note that there's actually, kind of hard to tell at low resolution, there's a slight gap there between the edge of the page and the end of the mountain. I would come in somewhat closer. I don't know if I explained scrubby zoom before. I use the default old style zoom where if this is what I want to mostly see, I drag the magnifying glass over it, and that's what it snaps to that's how big it ends up on my page or on my screen, my workspace. There's another zoom which I think is the default setup these days. I'm not that fond of it. You'll find it in the preferences, and it would be under performance. So here's performance and animated zoom, and I'll turn this on for a minute. I don't like it because I can pick a spot and zoom, but it doesn't give me the kind of specific control I want in zooming, so I don't actually use that one. Preferences, performance, animated zoom off, and I'm just going to zoom into the part I want to see. Now, I need, oh, actually, that's the mountain. I want to divide the water first. It's a simpler shape, and actually I don't think I actually need these shapes because I'm not doing any other shapes other than that rectangle. I'm going to take the pen tool and draw a vector path, and I'm going to start outside the rectangle and maybe to about here perhaps, and then come over to here. You usually don't want to go right to the like the apex of a curve. You want to start someplace before the apex of a curve, and not like if I was going inside here, I wouldn't want to be in the bottom of the curve. And come around to this side somewhere and then pull. Let's click and drag and match that. And again, probably that might be a little long there. I guess I better go over to here, pull on this one and see if I can match that curve. That's pretty close. And then someplace, let's go all the way over here. I've never actually done this, I think, with just 4 or 5 anchor points, but it's worth a shot. And that's pretty good. And I'm going to hit the escape key to end my drawing. And I think I'd give myself an A on that one. What do you think? Just a little closer here. If I need to edit that, I will use my white arrow direct select tool. I can select this anchor point and maybe just pull this a little bit more and make sure that I don't see any dark blue showing on the other side of that. Okay, so I've got a line defining the separation between the deep water and the shallow water. And if I now drag across this to select both the rectangle and that line, I should be able to use something on the Pathfinder palette here to get it to divide. And I'm not going to show you which one I'm going to use. I want you to try some and figure out what you think it should be. But I'll do that. And then double click on this to go into isolation mode on the group that is formed by the Pathfinder dividing this into 2 pieces. And you can see that I've got 2 pieces. Command Z, I want to make sure they stay precisely where they're supposed to be. And if I Command Y, go into drawing mode, you can't see any overlap or gap or any difference between those 2 curves. The curve that's part of the water and the curve that's part of the mountain sky group. It isn't quite divided into pieces yet, but Okay, so that's what I would have so far. Command Y, go back to preview mode so I can tell what I'm doing. The image that you're using as a template is pixel based, so when you go into drawing mode or wireframe, you can't see it. You can only see it as a preview, so that's why you have to do this in preview. Okay, now I just need to divide the top piece in the mountain. I'll do this in isolation mode on just this one path. And I usually start the mountain from this side. I'm going to start about there. Move that over for you. And probably about here. I think I might be able to get all the way over to here. I think so, and then there. And notice I'm never going to the bottom of a valley or the peak of a hill. I'm doing like halfway between them because I can get smoother curves that way. It might be a little long on that one. Let's try down here and see what I get. That's not too bad. I'm going to adjust that one a little. I'm going to come down right here, and I'm going to leave a little gap there because the original of this drawing had a little more of a gap there. I think at some point I changed it to try to make it seemingly easier, but it shouldn't make any difference. I'm going to cut this a little short here, and I'll hit the escape key to end that drawing. Go to my direct select tool and move this up a little bit this way, I think. And I want to move this out a little bit that way, because I think that's closer to the original. Okay, and there I've done it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 anchor points. Why do I try to minimize the anchor points? Well, because if I have to make an adjustment because I missed matching the curve, or I don't have it as smooth as I would like it, the less anchor points I have to adjust, the smoother the curve will be. Also, this minimizes the data in the file. There's a way to, and we actually do this on a future project, there's a way to take a pixel-based image and convert it to a vector-based drawing, but it requires a great deal of manipulation to avoid having it produce hundreds of anchor points. In the case of a complex drawing, maybe thousands or millions of anchor points. And it may not seem like anything important, since an anchor point is just a point in space and has no dimension until it creates a shape and then you fill it. But it's still binary data. So the more anchor points you have, the bigger your file is. So in terms of file economy, it's better to have fewer, but also in terms of actually getting smooth curves and smooth transitions, it's better to have as few anchor points as possible. So I've got that one set up, and I'm going to select that. I'm holding the Shift key to add to my selection. If I hold the Shift key again, I can subtract from my selection. I'll add that to my selection. And, just a minute, I'm not in isolation mode anymore. So I'm going to get back to where I was in isolation mode on this shape. So this and that, these two shapes. And once again, I'm going to use something. Let me just see if this one works. That one doesn't work because it doesn't have a fill. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to select this object and use my eyedropper to sample the sky color, and then hold the Shift key and add this, and then I'm going to see if this one works. That one didn't work, I don't think. Let's try this one. No, that one didn't work either. So it could be that the only one that really works well is that first one I used. I don't think that works. Nope. So it has to be this one, and you'll figure out which one that is. Okay, so I now have, again, going to isolation mode. This is a group I've created within the group within the layer, and you can see that actually, let me go back to no fill and a black outline, and you can see the two separate pieces. And I'm going to undo and get that back together, and actually once again make that no fill and a black outline. When you're done with this, you can fill in the colors the way you want to, or you can copy the colors that are there. But in terms of recreating an image or a drawing, it's probably best to have it just a black outline with no fill, so you can actually see what you're doing. Okay, so I've got three pieces that exactly fit together. I just need to divide my mountain piece or landmass into a landmass and shallow water or shoreline, whatever you want to call that. And I used to have a way of doing that where I'd make a duplicate of this piece and then adjust it to match that curve, but I think probably it's just as easy to go into isolation mode on this piece, the landmass piece, and make sure you've got the landmass piece. And let me just eyedropper sample that. You can see that's my landmass. Command Z, undo. Take my pen tool, and again, starting outside. The reason I start outside is because if I click right on the other line, I might just add this to that object as opposed to starting a new path. So I make sure I'm outside it. I also want to make sure I'm outside it because if I come right up to the edge and I'm not really at the edge, or if I'm just inside the edge and not touching the edge, then it won't actually divide into two pieces. So I go all the way through it. And let's see, I think I might be able to do this over here. What do you think? Do that one. If I press the control button, I can get my handle and still be in the drawing tool, although I'm not sure I need to draw anything more on this. I'm going to just move this out so that I have a pretty good shoreline, and then hit the escape key to end that drawing. Okay, so I take this one and this one, and again I'm going to use that same thing that you will figure out which one of the Pathfinders or shape modes will actually get this to happen. And click on that. And actually it just occurred to me that there is another way I could have done this, and that is to isolate the mountain and the water and then draw the path that divides it and divide. No, it wouldn't make any difference. That's okay. Delete that part. Okay, so again, double clicking to get back to my layer and out of the group. At this point, I've got four separate objects here, and I could ungroup this temporarily, and you can, let's see, right click, ungroup. You can Command Shift G, ungroup. You can go to the object pull down, ungroup. Let's see, how ungrouped am I? Command Shift G, ungroup those. I think I'm pretty well ungrouped now. Okay, so if I select this object and then take the eyedropper, sample the background, take this object, sample the background, this object, sample the background. Oops, that's the wrong one. It's this one. And that just leaves this thing right in here is actually the same color as the sky. Okay, now at this point I'm going to do a Command S save because I don't trust computers or electricity, and sometimes programs crash or other things go wrong. Out where I am, if there's a rolling brownout, I might lose power. So I'm going to save that. And it looks like I might have a little too much in that last piece there. I could have made that area a little thinner. I could Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, go back to here and move this down a little, because that actually should taper out and disappear as opposed to leaving a gap there under my landmass. And again, taking that and my landmass, let's see, I've got to, first of all, I got to be careful that I'm in the main selection tool and not the direct select tool when I do this. Let's see, is that this one? All right, I'm going to have to tell you what I can do. I'm going to double click on this, get into this group, and then I'll just select everything in that group by dragging over it. Hold the Shift key and click on the sky part, so I just get those two pieces. And again, use that Pathfinder function that you will have to figure out to divide those. Okay, now I'm going to double click on the open area of the artboard and direct select tool, select Command Shift G, ungroup that, make sure these are all ungrouped. Ungrouped, Command Shift G, ungrouped. Okay, so here's this shallow water or shoreline. That's still grouped. Have to ungroup that again. And just this part here, sample that, the sky, eyedropper, sample that, the water, sample that. Okay, now I can't see what I'm doing. I'm going to Command G group these again. I'm going to go to my layer palette. I'm going to lock this layer so I don't make a mess of it somehow later, and I'm actually going to turn it off. Okay, so I know I've got that done. All I have to do is draw an airplane and some clouds. I only see two clouds. I don't know about you, but what I see is two clouds. I see one that starts right here. Oops. New layer. New layer. Okay, and this has a green color. I don't like that green, actually. I could change that. Double click this, and I sort of like the dark green or the teal. I think I'll use the teal. Okay, and start. To come in just a little tighter. Command plus, spacebar to get my hand, and okay, so right there it starts. So I'm going to start there and drag over this way, and again, I don't want to go to this curve. I want to come before the curve and start curving it, and then after the curve, about there. That's pretty close. Close is close enough in clouds. Okay, now I seem to have a fill on that, so let me flip that. And this has a hard corner. I missed. I'm going to use my Command or Control button to grab that anchor point and move it to where the corner actually is. I'm going to press my Alt or Option key and pull the handle down this way because I'm supposed to go this way now. Still missed a little. Click on that one, and again, Command or Control to move this anchor point over just a little bit more. That's not going. I'm going to use the arrows on the keyboard to just scoot that a little. Okay, where am I going from here? Well, I don't seem to be connected anymore, so I'll click on that anchor point and start dragging it again. And it looks like there's a curve there, but this looks kind of straight, so I'll drag here, and then go up here and drag. And let's try over here. Yes. and around there, and then that's a hard corner again. I'm going to see which way does that go. Okay, this one, got an extra one there. I'm going to delete that, straighten this thing out here. This one is going to go this way. This is a little long, which is kind of confusing for me. Okay. This back this way. This one comes up a little to get that sort of hook. And then I'll take my pen tool again, click right on that anchor point to continue that drawing. And come up a little, and then go way over here somewhere. Pull a little this way. And down here, that kind of missed, so again, Control or Command to get to my anchor point, my direct select tool, and pull that over just a little bit this way, and then Option key to change the direction of this. And actually from here, I'm not sure I care what happens, and hold the space bar. I just have to get over here somewhere, so I'll go to the edge, click, and click, and this is going to be behind the airplane, so I don't really care what happens back here. And although I require that you have the background 4 pieces that exactly fit together, you don't have to do that on any other part of this. Everything else can be overlapping. Again, this should be one cloud, I think. I would start with the hard corners because it seems easiest. Someplace around here. I might have a slight curve to it, I think. Let's Command Z, do that again. I'm going to start up here and pull a little this way, come over to here, and then angle that down a little. Option, pull this down here, straight line, which can go down to about here, because I've got to get over to here. And we'll click here and start dragging to get a curve. I'm not really sure. I'm going to try there. And this one's a little strange, so it could be that it should curve about here, then come over to the other side, and then pull that end. That will need a little bit of adjustment if I want to be super accurate. And I'll just close this, and then go to my direct select tool, and move some of these a little bit, and see if I can't get a closer match. That's pretty good right there. Okay, so that's the clouds. I won't bother showing you the airplane, but I expect you to draw the airplane and draw the highlights on the airplane, these white shapes, and try to be as accurate as you can, and note where things are smooth and where things have a little angle to them, like that one comes to a little point, and try to match the airplane shapes as well as you can. We have some motion indications or little streaks. You can do those by just clicking on one end of them, click on the other end, and then here's my stroke palette. Give it a thickness that appears to match, and you don't have to be, obviously I am not perfect on that one, so you don't have to be perfect, but just pretty close to what you see there. And I wonder if they're all the same size. If I drag this down here, get it lined up, hold the Option key, and let go, and duplicate it, and you could do the same for those two down there. Okay, the final part of this, after you've done the airplane, and the airplane and the clouds can all be on one, and the streaks can all be on one layer. They're just overlapped on that layer. The final part is the word navigations. And the word navigations, you're not going to draw, because people who are really good at drawing letters and earn their living doing that have already drawn the letters, so that you can just use type, which, unless you're an expert at drawing letters, is a whole lot more practical. It would take a long time for someone new to vector drawing to be able to accurately duplicate even these fairly simple letters. Okay, this is the default typeface and it doesn't match. Let me do my character pull down up here. Let me try to. There you go. Myriad Pro, the default typeface. Well, it isn't. It's Helvetica, and either Helvetica Bold, or if you have Helvetica Neue, it would be Helvetica Neue 75, I think. Let's see, 75 or 65. I think it's 75. Close enough. We'll find out. Now, how do you get it to match exactly? I generally change it to some contrasting color, like let's say magenta, because I'm pretty sure I can see magenta against black. And it's too big the way I set it, the way I dragged it. Again, this is display composition, so you would just click and type and just start typing. Don't drag a rectangle for it because that would be paragraph text. Okay, my character pull down, I'm just going to start clicking down on the size until it seems to match. That's pretty close. Now it doesn't match the spacing, and that's because the spacing on the original is terrible. If you know anything of, and you may not, but if you know anything about optical spacing of type, looking at this, you should read this as NAVIGATIONS, because there's a big space between the A and the T and between the A and the V, and that's because this is what we would call foundry spacing. If this was cast metal type, it would be just the way it was cast. In digital type, it's the way it was designed, and it doesn't take into consideration when different shaped letters come together. When different shaped letters come together, you have to adjust the spacing, and we call this optical spacing. Now, Adobe software has a number of ways of adjusting the spacing. I think this type may be just a little fatter than the other, but this is probably not Helvetica Neue. It's probably the regular Helvetica Bold. I can see if I have that one. Let's just for grins. I really like the Neue series, so I don't use the old ones as much. The Neue series was designed to space and look better with digital composition. The original is based on metal composition that was converted to digital. So the Neue fonts tend to have much better spacing and visual appearance. I have Helvetica Standard, so here's Helvetica Standard, and that does match better. If you don't have Helvetica, you can use Arial or some other very similar font, but try to keep it more or less, I mean, as close as you can get to this typeface. If you're using one of the school's computers, you should have Helvetica available. Okay, so this doesn't match in spacing, and that's because this spacing is auto-kerning, meaning kern is adjusting the space between a pair of letters. Auto-kerning adjusts the space between all of the pairs of letters for the best optical appearance. Optical is pretty good. Auto is pretty good for optical, but there's actually a setting called optical that is even better. And I only use this for display composition. For body copy, auto is usually good enough. But for display composition, optical kerning, where it has, as you can see, it has made a great difference in the space between the letters. And then to get it to be the same general appearance in terms of length, I add positive tracking, which is adding an equal amount of space between every pair of letters. So tracking is equal spacing between every pair of letters in a range of letters, you know, like a word, a paragraph, a headline, whereas kerning is adjusting the space between each pair of letters individually. So I would do it this way, and if I make this black, let me make this black with no outline, and you compare that to the original, you see the irregularity in this spacing, and my spacing is much more regular and consistent. Now, final item, we've got a decorative bar here. That's kind of a maroon or mauve color. Or do you say mauve? And that could be a line. You could just click here, hold the shift key to constrain to make it straight, click on the other end, and make this, actually I'm going to use my eyedropper to get the color. I would point out that if I click over here, I get black as the color, and that's because I'm actually clicking on the bounding box for navigations, which has to include descenders if it had any descenders. And if I had a lowercase j right there, that would have to be included. So I want to be sure that either I move this out of the way or turn it off, or make sure that I use my eyedropper outside that bounding box to get that color. And oops, there's, I had the type selected, so change the type on that one. Okay, here's my rule. I'm going to select, click outside the bounding box for the type, and get that mauve color. And then I'm going to increase the stroke on that until it's about the size of the original. And I've got this as a white stroke with a mauve fill. I'm going to flip that, and then I can delete the white fill, because a straight line is not a closed path. It's not a path that can, not like a curved path. And I think we discussed this before when I first showed you paths, that if you've got an open path, one that does not meet and form a solid object, a shape like a square, rectangle, circle, some freeform object, it will fill across from the first to the last point. Or if you did it this way, it would fill across those. But as a straight line, a fill means nothing. It doesn't see it. But you can, all the same, have it a no fill. Okay, so that, other than the airplane, and then the highlights on the airplane, that completes the drawing. I would make sure that these are white with no fill after you've drawn the airplane. Obviously, you don't want to draw the airplane with these clouds in the way. Or you can make them white, and then on your layer palette, just make them invisible until you finish your airplane. And that's the end of navigations.